The blizzard struck without mercy on the Montana plains that December afternoon in 1882. And Hannah Norwood knew she was going to die out here in this frozen wasteland, miles from anywhere she could call home. She had been on the stagecoach from Helena to the small settlement where her intended husband waited, a man she had never met, but had corresponded with through carefully written letters over the past 6 months. Hannah had left Boston with hope in her heart and $50 sewn into the lining of her coat, everything she owned in the carpet bag that now lay somewhere in the snow behind her. The coach had overturned when the horses spooked, the driver shouting something she could not hear over the wind before everything went sideways. When she pulled herself from the wreckage, dazed and bleeding from a cut above her eye, the driver was gone. The horses were gone. The other passenger, an elderly woman who had slept most of the journey, was not moving. Hannah had called out, but her voice was swallowed by the wind. She had tried to wake the woman, but there was no pulse beneath her cold fingers. Panic seized her then, and she did the only thing she could think to do. She walked. The road had to lead somewhere. Someone would come. But the snow fell heavier, erasing the road, erasing everything, until there was only white and cold and the burning in her lungs. Her Boston boots, fine leather but thin-soled, were not made for this. Her coat, adequate for New England winters, was nothing against this Montana fury. Her fingers had stopped hurting 10 minutes ago, which she knew was a bad sign. Her face felt like glass that might shatter. She stumbled forward because stopping meant dying, and Hannah Norwood had not come all this way to die in the snow. She thought of her sister back in Boston, Margaret, who had begged her not to go west. She thought of the tiny apartment they had shared after their parents died, both working at the textile mill, breathing lint and slowly wasting away. She thought of Robert Cunningham's letter, the one that had started all this, with his careful penmanship describing his ranch and his need for a good wife. He had seemed kind in his letters. She had let herself hope. The world tilted and Hannah fell to her knees. The snow was almost welcoming, soft and white. She could rest here just for a moment to catch her breath. She did not hear the hoofbeats at first. They were distant, muffled by snow and her own fading consciousness. But then there was a shout, rough and urgent, and strong hands were lifting her. "No, no, you do not get to quit now," a man's voice said. "Can you hear me? Stay awake." Hannah tried to open her eyes, but her lashes were frozen together. She felt herself being lifted onto a horse, felt a solid body behind her and arms wrapping around to hold her in place. "I have got you," the voice said. "Just hold on." She lost time after that. There were fragments, impressions, the rhythm of the horse moving fast beneath them. The smell of leather and horse and wood smoke. Warmth finally, blessed warmth, and pain shooting through her fingers and toes as feeling returned. She cried out. "I know it hurts," the voice said, closer now, gentle. "That means you are alive. Stay with me." When Hannah finally opened her eyes fully, she was lying on a bed near a roaring fire. Heavy blankets covered her, and she was wearing a shirt that was not hers, far too large, made of soft flannel. Her wet clothes were hanging near the fire, steaming. A man knelt beside the bed, pressing a warm cloth to her hands, his face creased with concern. He was younger than she expected from his voice, perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that fell over his forehead and eyes so blue they seemed almost startling against his tanned skin. His jaw was shadowed with stubble and there was a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. He looked up and met her gaze, and something in his expression shifted, softened. "There you are," he said. "How do you feel?" "Cold," Hannah managed, though she was warmer than she had been. "Confused." "I am Zane Abbott. This is my cabin about 8 miles north of Chico. I found you on the road, or what used to be the road before this storm hit. What were you doing out there? Hannah's mind felt slow, struggling to work. The stagecoach. It overturned. The driver, he disappeared. There was a woman. She was dead, I think. I tried to find help. Zane's expression darkened. I will look for them when the storm passes. You are lucky I was out checking my cattle, or I would not have found you until it was too late. Another hour and you would have frozen to death. Thank you, Hannah whispered. Tears pricked her eyes, surprising her. I thought I was going to die. You did not. His voice was firm. You are safe now. He continued working on her hands, gentle despite his rough appearance. His own hands were calloused, scarred across the knuckles, the hands of someone who worked hard for a living, but his touch was careful, almost tender. I am Hannah, she said. Hannah Norwood. I was traveling from Helena to meet my intended, Robert Cunningham. He has a ranch near Chico. Something flickered across Zane's face, too quick to read. Robert Cunningham. Do you know him? Zane was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. I know him. We are not exactly friends. Hannah's heart sank. Oh, but that does not matter right now. What matters is getting you warm and keeping you alive. Are you hungry? She realized. Starving. She nodded. Zane rose and moved to the stove in the corner. The cabin was small but well built. One room with a bed, a table, 2 chairs, and shelves lined with supplies. A rifle hung above the door, and there were hooks for clothes and tack. It was spare but clean, everything in its place. He ladled soup into a bowl and brought it to her, helping her sit up against the pillows. Her hands shook too much to hold the spoon, so he fed her, patient and methodical, waiting between bites. The soup was simple, venison and vegetables, but it was the most delicious thing Hannah had ever tasted. She ate until the bowl was empty and Zane set it aside. More? He asked. No, thank you, that was perfect. She looked at him, really looked at him. There was something steady about Zane Abbott, something solid and real that made her feel safer than she had felt in months. You saved my life. Anyone would have done the same. But it was you, Hannah said. You were the one who found me. Their eyes met and held. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind howled against the walls, but inside it was warm and quiet. Zane looked away first, clearing his throat. The storm should pass by morning. I will take you into Chico then, get you to Cunningham's place. Hannah nodded, but something in her chest tightened at the thought. She pushed it away. She had made a commitment. Robert Cunningham was expecting her. She would marry him as promised. Tell me about Boston, Zane said, settling into the chair beside the bed. What was it like? So Hannah told him. She told him about the city, the noise and the crowds, the factories and the narrow streets. She told him about her parents dying within a year of each other, her mother of consumption and her father of a broken heart. She told him about working at the mill with Margaret, the endless hours and the poor pay, the men who looked at them like they were goods for sale. She told him about the advertisement in the newspaper, seeking respectable women for marriage to Western men, and how she had written to 3 different men before Robert's response had seemed the most sincere. I wanted something different, she said. A chance at a real life, a family, land of my own. The city was suffocating me. And now you are here, Zane said. Do you regret it? I nearly died today, Hannah said quietly. But no, I do not regret it. Even if I had died, at least I tried, at least I took the chance. Zane studied her with those blue eyes, and something in his gaze made her feel seen in a way she had never experienced before. You are braver than you think. I am terrified, she admitted. Brave is not the same as fearless. Brave is being terrified and doing it anyway. The storm raged on through the night. Zane insisted Hannah take the bed while he made himself a bedroll near the fire. She protested, but he would not hear of it, and truthfully, she was too exhausted to argue much. She drifted in and out of sleep, waking periodically to see him sitting by the fire, keeping watch. Once she woke and found him beside the bed, checking on her, and their eyes met in the darkness. "I am fine," she whispered. "Just making sure," he said, and there was something in his voice that made her chest ache. When morning came, the storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed. Snow lay thick and white as far as the eye could see, glittering in the weak winter sunlight. Zane was already up, making coffee and frying bacon. Hannah sat up, feeling sore but much better than she had any right to feel after yesterday. "Good morning," Zane said, glancing over his shoulder. "How are you feeling?" "Alive," Hannah said. "Thanks to you." He brought her coffee and she wrapped her hands around the tin cup, savoring the warmth. Her clothes were dry now and he politely turned his back while she dressed, though her fingers were clumsy with the buttons. When she was decent, he handed her a plate of bacon and fried bread. "I need to check on the stagecoach," Zane said. "See if there are any survivors, retrieve your belongings. You can stay here where it is warm." "I want to come with you," Hannah said. "It will not be pleasant." "I know, but that woman deserves to be brought in properly, and I need to get my bag." Zane studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but you wear my spare coat and gloves. Your Boston things will not cut it out here." He bundled her into a heavy sheepskin coat that hung nearly to her knees and thick leather gloves lined with fur. He saddled his horse, a sturdy bay mare named Sadie, and lifted Hannah up before swinging up behind her. The contact made her breath catch. She could feel the solid strength of him at her back, his arms on either side of her holding the reins. They rode out into the brilliant white landscape. The snow was deep, and Sadie struggled in places, but Zane was patient with the horse, praising her and guiding her carefully. Hannah had never been this close to a man before, not like this, not with his body pressed against hers and his breath warm against her ear when he spoke. "Are you warm enough?" he asked. "Yes," she managed. It took nearly an hour to find the stagecoach. It was on its side in a ravine, half buried in snow. Zane dismounted and helped Hannah down, then approached carefully. The elderly woman was still inside, frozen now, her face peaceful. Zane removed his hat. "Did you know her?" Hannah asked softly. "No, but she deserved better than this." He wrapped the woman in a blanket and secured her body to Sadie, apologizing to the horse. Hannah found her carpetbag, miraculously intact, and clutched it to her chest. They searched for the driver but found no sign of him, only tracks leading away from the wreck that disappeared under the snow. "He probably tried to walk for help," Zane said grimly. "In this storm, he would not have made it far. I will organize a search party when we get to town." They rode double on Sadie, moving slowly under the extra weight. Hannah felt sick thinking about the dead woman behind them, about the driver lost somewhere in the snow. She had been so worried about herself yesterday that she had not fully processed the horror of it all. "It is not your fault," Zane said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "You did the best you could. I left her there. You went for help. That was the right thing to do. You survived. There is no shame in that." Chico, Montana was a small settlement, barely more than a collection of buildings along a single street. There was a general store, a saloon, a church, a doctor's office, and a scattering of homes. Zane took the woman's body to the doctor, a weary-looking man named Dr. Fletcher, who promised to see to her properly. He also confirmed that he would organize men to search for the driver. "I should take you to Cunningham's ranch," Zane said, but his voice was reluctant. "It is about 3 miles east of here." Hannah nodded, her stomach tight with nerves. This was it. She was about to meet the man she had agreed to marry. She should be excited, hopeful. Instead, she felt only dread. They rode east, following a road that was barely visible under the snow. The Cunningham ranch was larger than Zane's cabin, a proper house with a barn and several outbuildings. Cattle dotted the snowy fields, dark shapes against white. As they approached, a man emerged from the house, tall and broad-shouldered, probably in his early 40s with graying hair and a thick mustache. "That is Robert," Zane said quietly. Robert Cunningham's face was hard to read as they dismounted. His eyes went from Zane to Hannah and back again, something cold flickering in his expression. "Abbott," he said, "what brings you here?" "I found your mail-order bride half frozen in the snow yesterday," Zane said evenly. "The stagecoach overturned in the storm. I kept her at my cabin last night for her safety." Robert's eyes narrowed. "Did you now?" The implication in his tone made Hannah's face burn. "Mr. Abbott was a perfect gentleman," she said sharply. "He saved my life. If not for him, I would be dead." Robert looked at her properly then, taking in her appearance. "Hannah Norwood, I presume?" "Yes, sir. You are younger than I expected." Hannah was 22, which she had stated clearly in her letters. Robert had claimed to be 35. The man before her was at least 40, possibly older. She swallowed her disappointment. "You are not quite what I expected either." Something dangerous flashed in Robert's eyes. Zane stepped closer to Hannah, a subtle movement that put him slightly between her and Robert. "She has had a difficult journey," Zane said. "She needs rest and care." "I will decide what she needs," Robert said coldly. "She is to be my wife." "She is not your wife yet," Zane replied, his voice quiet but hard as iron. "And she is under no obligation to marry you if she does not want to." "That is not for you to say, Abbott. We had an agreement." "Agreements can be broken." The two men stared at each other, and Hannah could feel the tension crackling between them like lightning before a storm. There was history here, something bitter and unresolved. "Gentlemen," Hannah said firmly, "I can speak for myself. Mr. Cunningham, I did indeed agree to come here with the intention of marrying you. However, I would like some time to settle in and for us to become acquainted before any wedding takes place." "That seems reasonable." Robert's jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly. "Very well, you can stay in the spare room. We will speak more tonight." Zane hesitated, clearly unwilling to leave her, and Hannah felt that same tight feeling in her chest. But what choice did they have? She had made a promise. Robert had paid for her passage. She could not simply walk away because she felt uneasy. "Thank you, Mr. Abbott," she said formally, "for everything." Zane's blue eyes searched her face. "If you need anything," he said quietly, "anything at all, my cabin is 8 miles north. Anyone in town can direct you." "I will remember." He mounted Sadie and rode away without looking back. Hannah watched him go, feeling as if something vital was being ripped away from her, which was absurd. She had known the man less than 24 hours. "Come inside," Robert said. "You must be tired." The house was well appointed, furnished with solid furniture and decorated with more care than she expected from a bachelor. Robert showed her to a small bedroom upstairs, plain but clean. "Martha will bring you some lunch," he said. "She is the housekeeper. She comes in during the day." "Thank you." Robert lingered in the doorway. "I am glad you made it here safely, Miss Norwood. When the news came that the stage had overturned, I feared the worst." "It was a close thing," Hannah admitted. "Abbott should not have kept you at his cabin overnight. It is not proper." "People will talk. He saved my life. Propriety seemed less important than survival. Nevertheless, we will need to marry quickly to avoid any scandal." Hannah felt her spine stiffen. "As I said, I would like some time to become acquainted first. We have been corresponding for 6 months. Letters are not the same as knowing a person." Robert's expression hardened. "You came here to be my wife, Miss Norwood. I have been patient. I have paid for your travel. I expect you to honor your commitment." "And I will," Hannah said, keeping her voice level despite the fear creeping up her spine. But I will not be rushed into marriage with a stranger. Give me a few weeks. If we suit each other, we can proceed. And if we do not suit each other, then we will cross that bridge when we come to it." Robert stared at her for a long moment, then nodded sharply. "2 weeks, Miss Norwood. Then we marry." He left, closing the door firmly behind him. Hannah sat on the bed, her hands shaking. What had she gotten herself into? Robert Cunningham was not the kind man from the letters. He was cold, demanding, entitled, and the way he looked at her made her skin crawl. But what choice did she have? She had no money to get back to Boston, no family here to take her in. She was trapped. No, she thought fiercely. She was not trapped. She had survived a stagecoach accident and a blizzard. She could survive this too. She would give Robert a fair chance, but if he proved to be cruel or dangerous, she would find a way out. She had not come this far to trade one prison for another. The housekeeper, Martha, was a kind-faced woman in her 50s who brought Hannah lunch and chatted pleasantly about the ranch and the area. She seemed fond of Robert, which eased Hannah's fears slightly. Perhaps he was just awkward, uncomfortable with strangers. Perhaps he would warm up once they knew each other better. But over the next few days, her unease only grew. Robert was not cruel exactly, but he was controlling. He dictated what she could wear, where she could go, who she could speak to. He did not like her reading, said it gave women foolish ideas. He expected her to learn to cook his favorite meals, to keep the house exactly as he liked it, to defer to him in all things. When she disagreed with him, his face would darken, and though he never raised his hand, she could sense the threat of violence lurking beneath his surface. She thought constantly of Zane Abbott, of his quiet kindness, his gentle hands, the way he had looked at her like she was someone worth saving. She had known him for less than a day, but he had shown her more respect and care than Robert showed her in a week. On the 5th day, she asked Robert about him. "What happened between you and Mr. Abbott?" Robert's face hardened. "That is none of your concern. I am curious. He saved my life." "I would like to understand." "Zane Abbott is a thief and a liar," Robert said flatly. 3 years ago we were friends. We were planning to go into business together, buying up land for cattle. I put in most of the money. Then Abbott backed out of the deal, kept his share of the funds, and bought his own land instead. He cheated me out of a fortune. Did you take him to court? It was his word against mine. We had no written contract. I trusted him as a friend. Robert's voice was bitter. That was my mistake. Abbott cannot be trusted. Hannah said nothing, but something did not sit right with the story. She could not reconcile the man Robert described with the man who had saved her, who had been so careful and kind. That night, she made her decision. She would go to Zane's cabin, hear his side of the story. She needed to know the truth before she bound herself to Robert forever. She waited until the house was dark and quiet, then dressed warmly and slipped out. The night was cold and clear, the stars brilliant overhead. She knew she should have waited for daylight, but Robert would never let her go if she asked. This was something she had to do. She walked north, following the road, praying she was going the right direction. The 8 miles seemed endless in the dark. Her feet ached and her face stung from the cold. She was being foolish, reckless, but she kept walking. After what felt like hours, she saw a light ahead. A cabin, warm light spilling from its windows. Relief flooded through her and she hurried forward, nearly sobbing with exhaustion. She knocked on the door. It opened immediately. Zane stood there in shirt sleeves, his eyes widening in shock. "Hannah, what are you doing here? It is the middle of the night." "I needed to see you," she said, and then she was crying, all the fear and stress of the past week pouring out of her. "I am sorry, I should not have come, but I could not stay there anymore." Zane pulled her inside, closing the door against the cold. "What happened? Did Cunningham hurt you?" "No, not physically. But Zane, I cannot marry him. He is not the man from the letters. He is controlling and cold, and I am afraid of him. Zane's jaw tightened. Then you will not marry him. But I have nowhere else to go, no money, I am trapped. You are not trapped. Zane took her hands in his, and the warmth of his touch made her breath catch. Hannah, listen to me. You can stay here. I will help you figure something out. You do not have to go back to him. I cannot stay here. An unmarried woman living with an unmarried man. It would be a scandal. I do not care about scandal, but I would ruin your reputation. I do not have much of a reputation to ruin, Zane said wryly. Cunningham has already told everyone who will listen that I am a cheat and a thief. He told me that story about the business deal. Is it true? Zane's face darkened. It is not true. The truth is that I discovered Robert was planning to cheat homesteaders out of their land, using legal loopholes and intimidation. When I confronted him, he threatened me. I told him I wanted no part of his schemes, and I backed out. I gave him back every cent of his money. But he has never forgiven me for walking away, for refusing to help him steal from innocent people. Hannah believed him. She could hear the ring of truth in his words, see the honesty in his eyes. He lied to me. Robert Cunningham lies as easily as he breathes. Hannah, I have been sick with worry these past days, knowing you were there with him. I rode into town twice hoping to catch a glimpse of you to make sure you were all right. I am all right now, she said softly. I am here with you. They stood close together, his hand still holding hers. The fire crackled behind them. Something shifted in the air between them, something that had been building since that first moment when he found her in the snow. I cannot stop thinking about you, Zane said quietly. I know it is wrong. You are promised to another man. But Hannah, these past days without you have been torture. I think about you too, she whispered, constantly. I want to do the right thing. I want to send you back to him to honor your agreement, but God help me, I cannot do it. I cannot send you back to a man who does not deserve you, who will not cherish you the way you deserve to be cherished. Then do not send me back. Hannah, do you understand what you are saying? If you stay here, if you break your agreement with Robert, there will be consequences. He will make things difficult. The town may shun you. It will not be easy. I do not care, Hannah said fiercely. I did not come all this way to be some man's property. I came for a chance at a real life. And Zane, these few days I have known you have felt more real than anything I experienced in Boston or at Robert's ranch. When I am with you, I feel like I can breathe. Zane closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, they blazed with intensity. If you stay, I need you to understand something. I am not a rich man. This cabin, the land, my cattle, that is all I have. I work hard, but it is a tough life out here. I cannot offer you luxury or ease. I do not want luxury. I want honesty. I want kindness. I want to be with someone who sees me as a person, not property. Then stay, Zane said. Stay with me. I will build you a reputation back through honest work and decent living. We will marry as soon as it can be arranged if you will have me. I know we have only known each other a short time, but Hannah, I have never felt like this about anyone. The moment I saw you in the snow, even half frozen and barely conscious, I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. And every moment since has only confirmed it. You are brave and strong, and you deserve everything good this world has to offer. Let me try to give it to you. Hannah felt tears streaming down her face. Yes, yes, I will marry you. Zane pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and it was like coming home. His lips were warm and gentle but insistent, and she kissed him back with all the emotion churning inside her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. I will never lose you again, he said fiercely. I promise you that. I found you in the snow, and I will never let you go. I am not going anywhere, Hannah whispered. They sat by the fire for hours, talking, planning. Zane would ride into town at first light and speak to the preacher about arranging a marriage. Hannah would stay at the cabin. There would be gossip, certainly, but once they were married, it would settle down. As for Robert Cunningham, Zane would deal with him. He will be angry, Hannah said. Let him be angry. He has no legal claim on you. You made no vows, signed no contract beyond agreeing to come here and meet him. You are free to choose. He will say you stole me from him. Then let him say it. Anyone who knows me will know the truth, and anyone who matters will respect your choice. Hannah hoped he was right. She slept in Zane's bed again that night while he took the bedroll, though she protested. I am trying to preserve what is left of your reputation, he said with a small smile. Once we are married, that is a different story. The way he looked at her when he said it made her blush down to her toes. Morning came bright and clear. Zane made breakfast and they ate together, the domesticity of it filling Hannah with warmth. This was what she had dreamed of. Not wealth or status, but this, simple moments shared with someone she cared for. Zane saddled Sadie and prepared to ride to town. I should be back by noon. Keep the door barred and the rifle loaded, just in case. You think Robert will come here? I do not know, but I am not taking chances with your safety. He kissed her goodbye, sweet and lingering, and then he was gone. Hannah spent the morning tidying the cabin, which barely needed it, and trying not to worry. Everything was happening so fast. A week ago, she had been on a stagecoach headed toward a new life. Now that life had changed entirely, but she did not regret it. Whatever difficulties lay ahead, she would face them with Zane. She heard hoofbeats around mid-morning and went to the window, expecting Zane. But it was not Zane. It was Robert Cunningham, and he did not look happy. Hannah's heart hammered. She checked that the door was barred and the rifle was where Zane had left it. She had never fired a gun in her life, but she would learn quickly if she had to. Robert dismounted and strode to the door. Miss Norwood, I know you are in there. Open this door. Hannah stayed silent. You are making a grave mistake, Robert called out. I am a patient man, but my patience has limits. You made an agreement. You owe me. I owe you nothing, Hannah called back, her voice steady despite her fear. I agreed to come here and meet you. I met you. I am under no obligation to marry you. I paid for your passage. Then I will repay you when I am able. You will repay me by honoring your commitment. You are coming back to my ranch right now. No, I am not. There was a long silence. Then Robert's voice came again, lower and more dangerous. Is Abbott inside with you? No. So you are alone. That makes this easier. Hannah heard him trying the door. The bar held firm. Then she heard him walk around the cabin, testing the shutters on the windows. Her mouth went dry. The cabin was solid, but Robert was a large man. If he truly wanted to break in, he probably could. Miss Norwood, Robert said, and his voice was right outside the window near her. I do not want to hurt you, but you are leaving me very few choices. Come out now and we will forget this happened. Stay in there and continue this foolishness, and I will take steps you will not like. I am staying here, Hannah said. Zane will be back soon. If you are smart, you will leave before he arrives. Robert laughed, a harsh sound. I am not afraid of Abbott. Maybe you should be. Another silence. Then, shockingly, the sound of footsteps walking away. Hannah peered through the shutter and saw Robert mounting his horse. He looked at the cabin one last time, his face hard. This is not over, he called out. Not by a long shot. Then he rode away. Hannah sagged against the wall, shaking. That had been terrifying, but she had stood her ground. She had not given in. Zane returned an hour later and she flew into his arms, telling him everything. His face was grim. I should have been here. You could not have known he would come, and I handled it. I did not open the door. He could have broken in. But he did not. Zane, I am fine. He held her close, his heart pounding against her cheek. I spoke to the preacher. He can marry us tomorrow if we want. I explained the situation. He is sympathetic. Tomorrow? Hannah pulled back to look at him. So soon. Unless you want to wait. But the sooner we are married, the sooner your position here is secure. Cunningham will have no grounds to claim you. Then tomorrow, Hannah agreed. That evening, Zane rode into Chico and returned with Martha, the housekeeper from Robert's ranch. Hannah was surprised to see her. I heard what happened, Martha said kindly. Robert is not a good man, dear. I have worked for him for 2 years and I have seen how he treats people. You are doing the right thing. I brought your things. She handed over Hannah's carpet bag, which she had apparently retrieved from the ranch. I also quit. I will not work for a man who tries to intimidate a young woman into marriage. I told him so to his face. Oh, Martha, you did not have to do that. Yes, I did. I have my standards. Martha smiled. Now you need a dress for your wedding. Let us see what we can do. Between them, they altered one of Hannah's dresses, a deep blue wool that brought out her eyes. Martha stayed the night, chaperoning, and the next morning they rode together into Chico. Zane had on his best clothes, which were not fancy but were clean and neat. He looked at Hannah like she was the sun coming up. The ceremony was simple, held in the small church with Martha and Dr. Fletcher as witnesses. The preacher spoke about love and commitment, about facing life's challenges together. Zane slipped a simple gold band onto Hannah's finger, one that had belonged to his mother. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Zane kissed her with such tenderness that Hannah felt tears slip down her cheeks. I love you, he whispered against her lips. I know we have not said it yet, but I do. I love you, Hannah. I love you too, she whispered back. I think I have loved you since you found me in the snow. They held a small celebration at the general store, which had the only room large enough for gathering. Several townspeople came, curious about the bride who had jilted Robert Cunningham for Zane Abbott. Hannah held her head high, answering questions politely, charming people with her honest warmth. By the end of the afternoon, she had won over most of the doubters. Robert did not attend, which was a relief. But Hannah knew this was not over. Robert was a man who held grudges. They returned to the cabin as the sun was setting, painting the snow gold and pink. Zane lifted Hannah down from Sadie and they stood for a moment, looking at their home. It is not much, Zane said. It is everything, Hannah replied. That night they lay together in Zane's bed, now their bed, learning each other in the firelight. Zane was patient and gentle, making sure Hannah felt safe and cherished. When he finally moved inside her, she gasped at the sharp pain, but he soothed her, kissing her tears, murmuring words of love until the pain faded, and there was only connection, only pleasure, only the two of them moving together as one. Afterwards she lay in his arms, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I never knew it could be like this, she said softly. Neither did I. He kissed the top of her head. You are my miracle, Hannah Abbott, and you are mine. The winter passed in a cocoon of happiness. They were snowed in for much of January, but Hannah did not mind. She learned to cook on the wood stove, improving with each meal. She learned to mend Zane's clothes, to keep the cabin warm and comfortable. Zane taught her to shoot the rifle, to handle Sadie, to recognize the signs of changing weather. They talked for hours, sharing stories of their pasts, dreams for their future. They made love often, discovering each other's bodies and hearts with equal enthusiasm. When spring came, Zane began working his land in earnest, expanding his herd, improving the cabin. Hannah started a garden, planting vegetables and herbs. She learned to churn butter, to preserve food, to do all the tasks required of a ranch wife. It was hard work, but she took pride in it. This was hers. This life, this land, this man. She had chosen it and she would make it flourish. Robert Cunningham remained a dark cloud on their horizon. He spread rumors about them in town, claiming Hannah was a woman of loose morals, claiming Zane had stolen her. Most people ignored him, but some believed. Hannah found herself occasionally snubbed in town, but she bore it with grace. She knew the truth. In June, things came to a head. Zane had gone into town for supplies and returned with a grim expression. "Robert is claiming I owe him $200 for the cost of bringing you out here from Boston. That is ridiculous. I agreed to marry him and I changed my mind. That is not theft. He has gotten a lawyer from Helena. They are threatening to sue." Hannah felt cold fury wash over her. "Then we will fight him. I will not let him intimidate us." The legal battle dragged on for weeks. Zane and Hannah met with their own lawyer, a sharp woman named Catherine Price who had moved from Chicago and set up practice in Helena. She was fascinated by the case. "This is about control," Catherine said. "Robert Cunningham cannot stand that a woman rejected him and chose another man. He wants to punish you both. Legally, he does not have a leg to stand on, but he is hoping the cost and stress of fighting will break you." "We will not break," Hannah said firmly. Catherine smiled. "I believe you, Mrs. Abbott." The case went before a judge in August. The courtroom was packed with people from Chico and surrounding areas, everyone curious about the outcome. Robert testified first, painting himself as a victim, a good man deceived by a conniving woman and her accomplice. Hannah sat next to Zane, her hand in his, and refused to look ashamed. When it was Hannah's turn to testify, she told the truth clearly and without embellishment. She described the stagecoach accident, Zane's rescue, arriving at Robert's ranch. She described Robert's controlling behavior, his lies about Zane, her growing fear. She described making the choice to leave, to choose a man who treated her with respect. "Mr. Cunningham claims you owe him for your passage," Robert's lawyer said. "Do you dispute that he paid for your travel?" "I do not dispute it, and I have every intention of repaying him when I am able. But I agreed to come west and meet him, not to marry him regardless of circumstances. When I realized we would not suit, I had every right to refuse the marriage. You spent the night alone with Mr. Abbott before you ever met Mr. Cunningham. Is that correct?" Hannah felt her face heat, but she kept her voice steady. "Yes. Because I was half frozen and would have died otherwise. Mr. Abbott behaved with perfect propriety. So you say. So I know." Zane testified next, describing finding Hannah in the snow, his decision to take her to his cabin rather than risk her life continuing to Cunningham's ranch in the storm. He testified about the old grudge between him and Robert, about Robert's dishonest business practices. His voice was calm but firm. "I love my wife," Zane said, looking directly at the judge. "I am not ashamed of that. The moment I saw her, even half dead in the snow, I felt something I had never felt before. And when I learned she was meant for Robert Cunningham, a man I knew to be cruel and dishonest, I was sick at heart. But I took her to him because it was her choice to make. When she chose to leave him and come to me, I thanked God for my good fortune. If that makes me guilty of something, then I am guilty." Catherine Price gave a brilliant closing argument, pointing out that mail-order bride arrangements were not legal contracts, that Hannah had every right to refuse a marriage, that Robert's suit was nothing more than wounded pride dressed up as justice. The judge, a weathered man named Harrison who had been in Montana since before it was a territory, listened to everything with an inscrutable expression. When all the testimony was done, he took less than 10 minutes to make his decision. "This is the most ridiculous case I have had the misfortune to preside over," Judge Harrison said. "Mr. Cunningham, you paid for a woman's passage west with the hope she would marry you. She was under no legal obligation to do so. She met you, found you unsuitable, and chose another man. That is her right as a free citizen of this country. You are not entitled to compensation for her passage, her time, or your wounded feelings. Case dismissed. The courtroom erupted. Hannah felt tears of relief streaming down her face as Zane pulled her into his arms. Robert stood red-faced and furious, shouting about injustice until Judge Harrison threatened him with contempt. Outside the courthouse, Catherine Price shook their hands. "Congratulations. You are officially free of Robert Cunningham." "Thank you," Hannah said, "for everything." "It was my pleasure. Cases like this are why I became a lawyer. Women deserve the right to choose their own futures." As they rode home that evening, Hannah felt lighter than she had in months. The shadow of Robert Cunningham no longer hung over them. They were free to build their life in peace. And build they did. Over the next year, Zane's ranch prospered. His herd grew, his reputation as an honest rancher spread. Hannah's garden flourished, and she began selling vegetables and preserves in town, earning her own money. She became known for her fair dealing and her warm heart. The people who had snubbed her after her marriage slowly came around, won over by her genuine kindness. She also discovered she was pregnant in the spring of 1884. When she told Zane, he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are having a baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "Hannah, we are having a baby." "I hope you are happy," she said, smiling. Happy does not begin to cover it. He set her down carefully as if she might break. "Are you feeling all right? Do you need anything? Should you be resting?" "I am fine. Women have babies all the time." "I am not made of glass." But he fussed over her anyway, insisting she not work too hard, bringing her tea and cushions, rubbing her feet when they swelled. Hannah found it endearing. This big, strong cowboy turned into a nervous, expectant father. Their son was born in December, a week before Christmas, during another snowstorm. Dr. Fletcher attended the birth, along with Martha, who had become Hannah's closest friend. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Hannah thought she could not endure it. But Zane held her hand the entire time, his presence giving her strength. When the baby finally came, wailing and red-faced and perfect, Hannah wept with relief and joy. Zane cut the cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. Dr. Fletcher placed the baby in Hannah's arms. "A son," he said. "A healthy, strong son." They named him Thomas after Zane's father. He had Zane's blue eyes and Hannah's dark hair, and he was the most beautiful thing either of them had ever seen. "Look what we made," Zane whispered, touching Thomas's tiny hand with one finger. "Hannah, look what we made together." "He is perfect," Hannah said. "Just perfect." That first night, with Thomas sleeping in a cradle Zane had built, they lay together in bed, exhausted and euphoric. "2 years ago I thought my life was over," Hannah said quietly. "I thought I would waste away in that Boston mill, never knowing anything more than gray skies and gray days. And then I got on that stagecoach. 2 years ago I was alone in this cabin, thinking I always would be," Zane said. "Thinking no woman would want a life this hard, this remote. And then I found you in the snow. You saved my life. You saved mine." Zane kissed her softly. "Every day with you is a gift, Hannah. Every single day." The years that followed were not without challenges. Ranching was hard work, subject to the whims of weather and market. There were lean years when they struggled to make ends meet. There were storms and illnesses and all the normal difficulties of life. But they faced everything together, their love the foundation that held steady through it all. Thomas grew into a sturdy, cheerful boy with his father's adventurous spirit and his mother's kind heart. When he was 3, Hannah gave birth to a daughter, Sarah, who had Hannah's gray eyes and Zane's stubborn determination. 2 years after that came another son, Michael. sweet-natured and gentle. The cabin expanded to accommodate their growing family. Zane added rooms, built a proper barn, improved the house until it was comfortable and welcoming. Hannah's garden grew into a small farm, producing enough vegetables to sell in town and help with their income. They worked side by side, partners in every sense of the word. Robert Cunningham left Montana in 1886, his reputation ruined after he was caught trying to defraud several homesteaders out of their land. Hannah heard the news without satisfaction or gloating. She simply felt relief that he could no longer hurt anyone else. On their 10th anniversary, Zane surprised Hannah with a trip to Helena. They stayed in a hotel, ate in restaurants, walked the city streets like courting youngsters. The children stayed with Martha, who loved them like grandchildren. On their last night, as they lay in the hotel bed, Zane pulled Hannah close. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "Leaving Boston, coming west, everything that happened?" "Not for 1 second," Hannah said. "Do you regret finding me, Hannah?" He turned her to face him, his blue eyes serious. "Finding you in that snow was the best thing that ever happened to me. I meant what I said that day in the courtroom. The moment I saw you, I knew you were special. I knew you were going to change my life. And you have, in every way possible. You have given me a home, a family, a reason to work hard and build something lasting. You have given me love. I would do it all again in a heartbeat." "I love you," Hannah said, touching his face. "I will love you until the day I die. And I will love you longer than that," Zane said. "Into eternity." They made love slowly, tenderly, celebrating a decade of partnership and devotion. Afterward, Hannah lay with her head on Zane's chest, listening to his heartbeat, and thought about the strange path her life had taken. If the stagecoach had not overturned, if Zane had not been out checking his cattle that day, if she had married Robert as planned, where would she be now? Certainly not here, not happy, not loved. "What are you thinking about?" Zane asked, running his fingers through her hair. "How everything happens for a reason," Hannah said. "All the terrible things that had to occur for me to end up exactly where I belong, with me, with you." They returned home to their children and their ranch, to the life they had built together. The years continued to pass, bringing both joy and sorrow. Martha passed away peacefully in her sleep when Thomas was 12, and they mourned the loss of the woman who had been a true friend. Zane's horse Sadie died of old age, and they buried her on the property with full honors for the mare who had carried them both to safety so many times. But there were far more good times than bad. Thomas grew into a fine young man, taking over more of the ranch work and showing a natural talent for animal husbandry. Sarah revealed an artistic streak, drawing and painting everything she saw. Michael discovered a love of books and learning, and they scraped together money to send him to school in Helena. Hannah and Zane grew older together, their hair graying, their faces lining, their bodies slowing. But their love never diminished. If anything, it deepened, maturing like good whiskey, growing richer with time. They knew each other's thoughts, finished each other's sentences, communicated with looks across crowded rooms. On their 25th anniversary, their children threw them a party. Half the town came, for Zane and Hannah Abbott were beloved in Chico, known for their generosity and integrity. There were speeches and toasts, food and dancing. Thomas, now 24 and engaged to a sweet girl named Lucy, stood up to speak. "My parents have shown me what real love looks like," he said. "Not the easy kind, not the kind that exists only when times are good, but the kind that weathers every storm, that faces every challenge together, that grows stronger through adversity. My father found my mother dying in the snow 25 years ago, and he saved her life. But I think she saved his too. They saved each other, and in doing so, they built something beautiful. A home, a family, a legacy of love. I hope Lucy and I can build something half as strong." Hannah cried during the speech, and Zane held her hand, his grip still strong and sure. Later, as they danced together while someone played fiddle, he whispered in her ear, "I told you once that I would never lose you again. I have kept that promise." "You have," Hannah agreed. "And I promise you the same. I will never leave you, Zane Abbott. Not in this life or the next. Then I am the luckiest man who ever lived." They danced until the stars came out, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, by friends and neighbors, by the community they had helped build. And when they finally went home to the ranch, to the bed they had shared for 25 years, they held each other close and thanked God for second chances, for love found in the most unlikely circumstances, for a life well lived together. Thomas married Lucy the following spring, and they built a house on the property, taking over more of the daily ranch operations as Zane's back troubled him increasingly. Sarah married a lawyer from Helena and moved to the city, though she visited often with her growing family. Michael became a teacher, returning to Chico to educate the next generation of children. Hannah and Zane became grandparents many times over. Their house was always full of visiting children and grandchildren, noise and laughter and life. They spoiled the little ones shamelessly, told them stories of the old days, taught them about hard work and integrity and love. On a warm summer evening in 1907, 25 years after they married, Zane and Hannah sat on the porch swing he had built years ago, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in shades of gold and crimson. They were both in their late 60s now, their bodies worn by decades of hard labor but their spirits still strong. "I have been thinking," Zane said, his arm around Hannah's shoulders. "About what?" "About that day I found you in the snow, about how close I came to not riding out that day. The storm was bad. I almost stayed home, but something told me to check on the cattle. Something told me to take that road. Do you ever think about that? How many tiny decisions had to align perfectly for us to find each other?" "All the time," Hannah said. "If the stagecoach had not overturned. If I had frozen to death before you found me. If I had actually married Robert. There are so many ways we could have missed each other. But we did not. We found each other. Against all odds, we found each other. And we built this," Hannah said, gesturing at the ranch, at the house where Thomas and Lucy lived with their 4 children, at the land that had been shaped by their labor and love. "We built something lasting, Zane, something that will continue long after we are gone." "Our legacy," Zane agreed. "Our children, our grandchildren, this land, but mostly just the love. That is what will last forever." They sat in comfortable silence, rocking gently, watching the stars emerge one by one. Hannah leaned her head on Zane's shoulder, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek, steady and strong despite his years. This man who had saved her life so long ago. This man who had become her everything. "I love you," she said softly. "I have loved you for 25 years, and I will love you forever." "And I love you," Zane replied. "My Hannah, my miracle in the snow, you are the best thing that ever happened to me." They watched the stars together, 2 people who had found each other against impossible odds and built a life of meaning and joy. The night was peaceful, full of promise, full of the quiet contentment that comes from a life well lived and love fully expressed. In the years that followed, they continued to age, but they did it together, never complaining, always grateful for each additional day. When Zane's back finally gave out completely and he could no longer ride, Hannah read to him every evening, his head in her lap, her fingers gentle in his gray hair. When Hannah developed a cough that would not quit, Zane made her soup and tea, fussing over her like he had when she was pregnant with Thomas. They were fixtures in Chico, the elderly couple everyone knew and respected. Children were taught to greet them politely. Young couples came to them for advice. They were living proof that true love existed, that it could endure, that it was worth fighting for. Zane passed away peacefully in his sleep on a cold January night in 1912, with Hannah beside him and his children and grandchildren in the house. He simply did not wake up, slipping away as gently as snowfall. Hannah held his hand and wept, her heart breaking even as she thanked God for 30 years with this good, kind, steadfast man. They buried him on the ranch, in a spot overlooking the valley with a simple stone that read, Zane Abbott. Beloved husband, father, grandfather. He saved her life and she saved his. Hannah lived another 5 years, surrounded by her family, still sharp and engaged with the world. She told stories about Zane to her grandchildren, keeping his memory alive, making sure they knew what kind of man he had been. She tended the garden he had built for her. She sat on the porch swing and remembered. When she died in her sleep in 1917, at the age of 74, her children buried her next to Zane under a matching stone that read, Hannah Abbott. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she found her home in the snow. Their grandchildren carried on their legacy, working the ranch, living in the house, telling the story of how their grandparents met during a blizzard and fell in love against all odds. The story became part of family lore, passed down through generations, a reminder that love can be found in the most unexpected places, that courage and integrity matter, that choosing the right person makes all the difference. The ranch still stands today, worked by Abbott descendants, a testament to what Zane and Hannah built together. And on cold winter nights, when the snow falls heavy and white across Montana, people say you can sometimes see two figures walking together across the fields, hand in hand, never parting, never losing each other again. Just as he promised all those years ago, when he found her dying in the snow and vowed to never let her go. Their love story became legend in Chico, told and retold until it took on mythic proportions. But those who knew them, who actually lived alongside Zane and Hannah Abbott, knew the truth was even better than the legend. They knew about the quiet mornings drinking coffee together. The way Zane always kissed Hannah goodbye, even after 30 years. The way Hannah's face lit up whenever he walked into a room. The 1,000 small kindnesses they showed each other daily. The laughter, the teamwork, the absolute certainty that they were meant to be together. That was the real story. Not just the dramatic rescue in the snow. Not just the confrontation with Robert Cunningham. Not just the wedding and the babies and the happy ending. But the everyday choice to love each other, to work together, to build something meaningful. The decision, made fresh every morning, to be partners in every sense of the word. And that, more than anything, was what made their love worth remembering.